Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Approachable Music. I am your host, producer, guest, editor. This is Kiefer. I am going to play some piano today. I've got a little keyboard sitting right here. I love the sound that just made. And I'm going to be answering your questions. I've got a lot of voicemails. The last episode was with Luke Titus. Please check that out if you haven't seen it yet. It's so good. He's just spitting wisdom the whole time. And you will be a better musician for it if you check it out. That's something I believe. And share it with your friends if you haven't already. I really rely on you guys as the community to push this thing forward. So leave a comment, leave a voicemail, like and subscribe, all of the above. I really do need your help because without you, this is why I do it. So I can connect with my community on the internet. Speaking of which, I saw a question the other day, a harmony question, and I wanted to get into that. So I'm going to read this harmony question because it's about a song I played on a Mind Design record many years ago called Use Your Mind, which is on the Body Wash album. But this question comes from Cosmo Computer, as it were. And Cosmo Computer asked, he says, I have a super specific chord/harmony question. I was transcribing the chords of Mind Design's Use Your Mind, and the chord progression of the bridge goes E flat minor. In fact, I'll play these so you can hear. Might as well. It goes E flat minor first. E flat minor to F alt. To A flat minor. To B flat alt. To E flat minor again. F alt again. F alt to B flat major. To B flat alt. And then it repeats. So it's almost like it's like, I guess it depends what key you think of this in. I'm going to think of this as being in E flat minor. So it's like E flat minor or G flat major if you want to think of it that way. That's like the 2 if you're in E flat minor. 4, 5. So back to the 1. So now the question is, from Cosmo Computer, the only part I don't get is why he can go from F alt to A flat minor again. I love this question. Obviously it works and sounds gorgeous, but what is the harmonic explanation for this? Since F alt is dominant, and I don't understand how it can go to a subdominant, A flat minor being the 4 of E flat, and still sound good. It's a great question. Well, the first thing I would say is, look, the sound, or rather, the rules follow the sound, not the other way around. Like that's how music theory works. Like music theory is like something sounds good, and then you ask why, and then you come up with a theory. It's not. The rules didn't precede the sound. It's not like someone said, hey, here's a book. Like, who wrote the book of music theory? You think, like, God handed it down? Like, someone wrote it. A human made it up. It's a made-up thing. And it's not like someone made it up and then they tried all the things. That's not what happened. What happened was things sounded good, and then they asked why, and then they came up with a theory. So, it's not like, but I think you understand that. It's just, I want to make sure, because the answer is in your question. The answer is, why does it work? Because it sounds good, which is what you said. Now that said, let's break it down. So, something that I think about music theory based on my experience, based on stuff I've heard. Hold up. Need some coffee, dude. I needed that. I'm going to sit back and do this so I can play piano a little bit easier. Oh, but if I do that, then my mic's going to be far away. Damn it. Okay. I have to figure out how I'm going to do this. It's a little uncomfortable. I haven't thought this through. I haven't done this yet on the podcast, so it's a little sloppy. I'm going to be on this side for a little while, and you guys are just going to deal with it. Okay. So, right. The rules follow the sound, not the other way around. And so what I think about harmony, based on my experience of listening and theorizing, is that harmony is just a combination of notes, right? So, and then the way you can evaluate the stability or the instability of harmony is by how much those notes change. So the first chord we play is E flat minor, and really the key is this E flat minor, or G flat major is how I like to think of it. Now, I like to think of these scales a little differently. I think of them the Barry Harris way. This is in the scale as well to me. That's also in the key, is that D there. And then when we get to F alt, but really it's not F alt to me, because I don't think he plays it like this. I don't know if there's a B in there. But even if there is, that's still worth checking out, because it does sound good. But let's just say it was like a regular F7, sharp 5, sharp 9, which, by the way, this scale to me is actually just B flat minor. Again, the Barry Harris way. So it's not an F alt to me. I'm looking at this as an F7, sharp 5, sharp 9. And there's a difference, because this scale has a B flat and a C in it, whereas F altered would have take out the C and the B flat and put in a B instead, and low key a D. But again, it's getting a little crazy here. But let's just that's the Barry Harris way. There's also a D in there because it has this diminished in there. But I'll ignore that for now even, and let's just go plain F alt. This is what it would be, okay? Now, again, by default, when I see a sharp 5, sharp 9, I don't go altered. Just by default. When I see sharp 5, sharp 9, I usually assume it's this. Sorry, so this would be F7, sharp 5, sharp 9, which would be the scale. Which is, again, B flat, B flat natural minor with that A in it. Or if you don't think of scales that way, if you want to just say B flat natural minor, but you kind of do, because that's what makes it this, Or how about this? You could say B flat harmonic minor, right? Okay. So all that to say, we went from this, or let's just go straight natural minor. We go from E flat natural minor to to B flat natural minor, right? Only one note changed. So if I'm looking at that chord change from here to here, and I'm like, why does that work? I'd be like, well, only one note changed. We have an A now. We used to have a D natural, and we used to have a B natural. Now we have a C and an A. Again, I think of these scales a little differently than most people, because I think about I use Barry Harris scale, so it's a little different. But even if I think of it the standard way, which is like E flat natural minor, and then let's say it was F altered. Well, again, we go from this E flat natural minor to F alt. I mean, one note changed. That's a pretty stable thing. I mean, think about it. If I had a song where literally it's just this, only one thing changing, that's pretty stable. And then the next chord is B flat minor. Sorry, A flat minor, which is, again, back to that same scale that we started with. So, it's not that crazy. Now, that said, something else I believe about harmony is like all the chords within a scale are pretty interchangeable with each other. At least I believe them to be more interchangeable than the average person, I would say, that gets into this stuff. And I always consult like Barry Harris for various things because he's my favorite, and I think he has the most like the best like understanding of classical harmony and like really like classic traditional sounds, which is still the bedrock of like everything we do. I'm gonna turn up my mic. My mic doesn't seem to be loud enough. Check. Cool, that's better. And so anyway, with Barry Harris. So something else is, gosh, I forgot what I was gonna say. E flat minor, A flat minor. Right, the chords are more interchangeable with each other. So let's talk about like C major, for example. Because if this were in C major, the first chord would be A minor, and the second chord would be B alt, and then we go to D minor. Dude, this sounds good for so many reasons. I mean, well, first off, if you're in the key of C, B7 alt or B7 sharp 5 sharp 9 is super common. So, I mean, something else I would modify about the question, or rather just give you a little tip, which I think will help you in the future, is just to know that, F7 altered or F7 sharp 5 sharp 9, either chord, in the context of G flat major or E flat minor is actually very common. Because check this out. Let's go back to C major. Again, that equivalent, the same chord would be B altered, right? So, or rather, it goes to the 2 chord. But here's the thing. That B altered sounds good before every chord in C almost. Check it out. Like B alt to C sounds great. B alt to D, as we already saw, sounds great. B alt to the 3, of course that's just a 5-1. B alt to the 4 even. Sounds good to me. B alt to G, sounds great. Sounds really good. Check this one out. B alt to A. Sounds good. B alt works everywhere. And again, the reason why, number one, I would say it's not far away. It's only one note different. Especially if you play it as a true altered scale. Only one note changed. There's other reasons too. I mean, ooh boy, should I go into it? If you play B7, I'm tired this morning, that's why I'm misspeaking on all these chords. If you take a B7 sharp 5 sharp 9, for instance, oh, you know what? Just 1 second, you guys. I'm realizing that I have to make sure this thing is charging. Are we charging? I think we are. Yeah, I think we're fine. If you take a B7 sharp 5 sharp 9 and you play it the way I play it by default, which isn't an altered chord, it would be this scale, which is the same as a G major scale, which has the major diminished sixth scale. Again, see Barry Harris for this. This is just a mode of G major to me, because G major also has an E flat in it once you add the diminished sixth, the major diminished sixth scale. And so, also in the key of G major is C major, or C Lydian, really. But now, this new Barry Harris way of playing it, which has a flat 3 as well, adds this new color. And so, when I play that B7 sharp 5 sharp 9, that's why it goes so well into C major. Because it almost implies like... So, B altered is almost, not altered, B7 sharp 5 sharp 9 is, in a way, diatonic with C major. That's why they go so well together. But then, when you go to the C major, it's almost implying a C Lydian. Now, that's slightly different from going to D minor, which is diatonic to C major, C Ionian, not C Lydian. So it's a little different, but it's not far. Again, this stuff is just not far away. So like, you can sit here and say, oh yeah, I mean, this is the other thing I think, in the way you ask the question, I think reveals something, which is like the assumption that dominant chords have to do something. Like dominant chords, like any other chord, they can precede anything that you want them to, or follow anything you want them to. You listen to the sound, you evaluate the sound, then you come up with your analysis of why the sound is that way, and that becomes your theory. So to me, a few theories that I think help. Number one, like harmony is like, think about harmony in terms of just like how many notes are changing. It doesn't have to be a dominant 5-1. Like again, I can do a dominant chord like this G7. I can do before any chord in C major, and it'll sound good. Happens all the time. Just 2-5-2-5 and 1, of course. And then same thing goes for the next key over. If I go to the key of F and I play that G7, and then I just go to chords in the key of F. I can go to the 2. Of course, I can go. That happens all the time. I go to the 3. I'll even make it intentionally more unstable and dissonant, and it'll still sound good. Check it out. Very hairspray. Sounds good to me. Going to B flat, or maybe sounds good everywhere. So again, I'm playing the 5 of C and then preceding it before any chord in the key of F, and it sounds good. I didn't even play the best one. It's just playing the 5. Sorry, this MIDI controller is a little tough to play. I mean, so one thing that's missing from your question, I think, is, I'm curious if you thought about what key F alt is, or rather F7 sharp 5 sharp 9. Because I think if you did, you'd be like, oh, like, you know, this is just in the key of like B flat minor or D flat major. It's the 3 of D flat major to me. So, and by the way, these first 2 chords, you could think of this as the 2 also of D flat. So these are actually, in a way, these are kind of diatonic to one another, depending on how you play that E flat. Because I could play do da do do da da do. Now, if that's the case, and this is just, if we were in D flat, then this is just the 5 minor. How common is that, right? That's all the time. Like that's every song has the 5 minor in it at some point. Almost it. I mean, that's like, so in that case, nothing crazy has happened. We just played the 2, the 3, 5 minor, and we could have continued, done a 5-1 to the 4, which, by the way, it is kind of the same process, because if you do a 2-5-1 to the 4, right, and we're in the key of D flat, this isn't in the key of D flat, you know? Why don't we have a problem with that? Why do we have a problem with this, but we don't have a problem with that? This is 1 key away, so is this, right? This is a feature of well, I guess now I've kind of flipped it a couple ways now. If we're in the key of G flat, which we are, this isn't in that key. We have a problem with that. Meanwhile, if we're in the key of D flat and we play this, which is not in the key of D flat, right? That's in the key of G flat. See, those are each one key away. And, you know, I would say both of those are very common. Like playing an altered chord on the, you know, if we're, again, go back to G flat. If we're playing F7, sharp 5, sharp 9, or altered, whatever you want to call it, you know, playing an altered chord on the 7th scale degree, very common. That's just like, that should give you no problems. That should be like, that's fine. Because it's, again, it's only one key away. In the same way that if you play the 5 minor, or if you play the 2 dominant, or if you play the 3 chord as a minor 9 with a natural 9, like those aren't diatonic to a key, but all because they're not diatonic does not mean they don't sound good and that they're not allowed. It just means that they're implying one key over. And that just sounds really good, you know, because if you go one key to, you know, like from C to G, now it almost has like a Lydian sound. If you go from C to F, it has that dominant sound, you know, because F has a flat 7. Sorry, F has a B flat in it, which is the flat 7 of C. So yeah, that's how I think about those things. I feel like I just like covered a lot of stuff in a really short amount of time and was trying to do it kind of quickly, admittedly. But I hope it's helpful. So yeah, my answer to you would be that, yeah, just remember that rules follow the sound, not the other way around. You make the sound first, then you try to come up with a rule. And the reason why you come up with a rule is so that you can replicate it. You can replicate it in other keys, and then you can expand the rule to other things, which is what I'm doing at the end there, right? I'm saying, well, hey, playing a chord borrowed from a key, one key away, generally sounds really good. And then I tested it. Dude, I low-key just demonstrated the whole process, right? So then you take the chord from one key away, you test it, right? So I took a B alt, for example. I transposed it to C to make it easier to understand. I took that B alt and I tested it with all the chords in C major, and that sounded fine, right? And then I took a non-B alt. I took like a different type of chord and tested it with all the, right? I took a G7 and tested it with all the chords in F, and that sounded good too. Thus proving the theory. And yeah, so again, the theories would be playing a chord from diatonic to one key away with the next key over sounds good, and that you're allowed to do that. And that the other rule being like dominant chords don't have to be 5s. Like, dude, we need to get over that. I feel like I have to like, I don't know what harmony teachers are out here explaining dominant chords that way. Dominant chords are they're convenient for a lot of reasons because they're often used as a way to modulate between places, but that's not their only role. A G7 is not only useful as a 5. That's ridiculous. You can play a G7 before any of the other chords in the scale. Like if I'm playing a C major, I'll play a G7 before a 2, a 3, a 6. It doesn't just go 5-1. A 1 is not the only thing that can follow a 5. It can be any of them. And it works just as well. And you can also play any other of the diatonic chords from any of the other keys after that. It's just going to have a different sound, which is, for me, signified by however many keys you move away primarily, and also like what I haven't talked about yet is melodically, how the bass note moves. Excuse me. So for example, if I went from like G7 to, which is the key of C, to like the opposite key, which is G flat, and I play, a B major or something, or like a D flat where the bass is moving a tritone, that's probably going to be the most unstable thing I could do following a G7. But it still works. Like I'm still allowed to do that. Check it out. Now, you'll notice I'm making that top voice move very smoothly over the bar line. It's only moving a half step max. But so I'm kind of intentionally making it as smooth as possible. But dude, if that works, then everything else on the damn circle works. Like everything else, all 12 keys and all 7 bass notes of each key work. So, yeah. Yeah. That's what I would say to that. That's a great question. I got fired up. Let's get to some voicemails. Let's see what people are asking. Let's talk to the people. Okay. Let's get going.
Hey, Kiefer, Ryan from Cleveland. Do you have any tips for keeping things moving when writing music? I find myself obsessing over things like the time feel, harmonic arrangement. I'm stuck between like kind of rushing through cookie cutter ideas and then on the other end, like falling down the rabbit hole of being overly perfectionist. So just wanted to see your thoughts on that. If you have any like processes you try and use. Love your music, man, and I'm really enjoying this podcast.
Word up. Thanks, Ryan from Cleveland. Perfectionism and cookie cutter ideas is what Ryan's asking about. Thank you, Ryan, for the question. Really appreciate it. I will say this. Cookie cutter ideas, there's some really interesting solutions there. So the habit with a cookie cutter idea is that you're probably going with a format or a template that you've already used of some kind, right? For example, I remember there was a time in my life where I was intentionally making songs with a certain type of chord change, where I'd go from like a minor chord, like say E minor 7, and then going up a half step to F major. And I just love that sound. But I'd play that. And then, some other day I'd try another one, but I'd do it in a different key, And then, a few weeks later, I would like try to move on to something else. And then, not that that's the only thing I did for a couple of weeks, but a few weeks later, I'd be playing, making a beat, and then I'd find myself just using a similar chord change, or, maybe like things would be slightly different, but it's like still kind of like, instead of like G minor, maybe it's like, I don't know, D minor, which is like the 3 of B flat, whereas G flat would be the 6. And then instead of like A flat major, I'm playing like F minor, so it still has like a similar sound. And then I'm realizing like, oh, like I'm just like playing the same chord change just with different bass notes. I'm literally playing the same scales for each chord. I'm just playing different bass notes, and I'm hitting like, this is a cookie cutter for me. So something that works for me, and I'm a very hyper analytical guy. I am the son of 2 aerospace engineers, so I am genetically predisposed to being very hyper analytical. Whether I like it or not, it's kind of how my brain works, I've discovered over the years. And so something that's worked for me, if you're like me, the cookie cutter is kind of an advantage, because that just means you can create a new cookie cutter. But as long as you're making one that is interesting and unique and somewhat unique to you, then I think it's totally fine. Cookie cutters are fine, dude. You just don't want to be a cookie cutter in the sense of like, being stock or boring. I think cookie cutters are fine if they're unique to you. If you made your own special cookie cutter, if you were artistically making nice cookie cutters and then making music out of them, that's super valuable. So how does one do that? Yeah, I would just change it. I mean, I would ask like, okay, what's this thing I'm doing the same way every single day? And now I just need to come up with a new thing. And oh, by the way, all because you come up with a quote unquote a new cookie cutter approach to something, which really translates to like a new template, a new formula. Like that doesn't mean you're always going to be playing that. Like, I come up with cookie cutter things all the time, but that doesn't mean that I'm playing cookie cutter stuff later, because my formula, my cookie cutter, whatever you want to call it, becomes ingrained in my playing, and then it becomes natural. Then it just comes out, you know, in a way that isn't cookie cutter. So the cookie cutter is just like a way you can start to try new things. So what I would do is I would say, okay, let's come up with something new. And to come up with something new, if you can't come up with something new, sometimes you do, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. If nothing's coming out, you got to go back to the drawing board and listen to some music, listen to some new music, and start emulating stuff, copying stuff, understanding that thing, reinterpreting it, flipping it around, come up with something new. I always go back to listening to stuff. If I'm having trouble harmonically, I'm going to listen to Egberto Gismonti. I'm going to listen to Claire Fisher. I'm going to listen to Wayne Shorter. I'm going to listen to Herbie. I'm going to listen to all kinds of stuff. Akaseka Trio. I'm going to listen to Barry Harris. I'm going to listen to Stevie Wonder. I'm going to listen to George Duke. Who was I listening to just the other day? I was trying to get some crazy harmony. What was that? Whatever. There's so much stuff I'm listening to all the time. So if you want to get out of the cookie cutter, do that. Okay. Now the other issue of that you brought up, Brian, was perfectionism. How to deal with perfectionism. This is like one of my all-time favorite questions, because again, like, dude, you'll notice in my podcasts, I am going to play more piano as we go forward in this podcast. But you'll notice my favorite thing to talk about is the fundamentals, just the most fundamental thing, which to me is how you approach this thing mentally, how you approach music improvement mentally. Because if you have a good mental approach, that fundamental breeds all the other fundamentals. If I have a good mental approach, that means I can have consistent practice. If I have a good mental approach, then the quality of the practice can go up. And so now I'm consistently practicing in a quality way, right? But if I don't have a good mental approach, if I'm negative, if I'm too overconfident, right? If I'm too high on myself and not actually having the humility to be self-critical and like understand this music, if I don't have reverence for the music, if I don't have, right? Or if I'm too hard on myself, too negative, my practice is spotty because I'm just like slogging through, because I'm just like rough on myself. If I'm not organizing, right? These are all mental approaches that breed all of the other things. You can't consistently develop good harmony if you don't have a good mental approach. Or any of the other musical skills. You got to have a good mental approach. So that's why I love this stuff. Anyway, perfectionism is one of those mental struggles, right? That's one I deal with. Actually, do I deal with that? I think it's a little different for me. I think I used to be a perfectionist. No, you know what? Pump the brakes. I am not a perfectionist at all. If anything, I have the opposite problem. Yeah, I'm not a perfectionist. I don't even know why I said that. I think I was trying to be relatable, but I can still, and so I lied about being a perfectionist when I'm actually really, really not. However, it's still relatable in the sense of like, it's still a spectrum that causes issues. If you're like anti-perfectionist like me, there's just going to be other problems, which I'll get to in a minute. But, yeah, I'm an anti-perfectionist. I believe in getting stuff wrong, because that's how I learn. So for me, like, getting something wrong is like acquiring a skill, because when I get something wrong, I'm going to learn why it went wrong, and then I can analyze a way to avoid getting it wrong in the future. And now I've developed a skill. So to me, every time I get something wrong, I'm like, okay, good, yes. Like, let me acquire more stuff. Not every time, but I have a mental habit where every single time I fail, dude, this might be one of my best skills. Every time I get something wrong, and I feel depressed about stuff all the time. Like, for example, dude, I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys right now. I dropped an episode on here on this podcast, and it really wasn't doing as well as I hoped it would. And I remember thinking, like, damn, like, this is going to be harder than I thought. And part of me, like, wanted to get, like, really negative and be like, oh, man, that was a waste of time. Like, people aren't rocking with it. But then after that, I thought, wait, dude, opportunity. Learn. We made a fucking podcast, dude. That takes a lot of work. It takes, like, more than a couple hours to make one. And of, like, just focusing on this one thing to make one. That's, like, a good thing. And, like, what can I learn from this? So I think I really have, like, a good skill with that. And that helps me to not be a perfectionist. I always say, hurry up and get it wrong. Because every time I can get something wrong, I'm going to learn. Like, before, like, dude, this first episode of this podcast is a good example. I could have waited 3, 4, 5, 6 months, waiting for the funds to get a better camera, waiting for the funds to get, better lighting setup or audio. I remember, like, right before I did this podcast, I put it off another week because I was like, I really just need, like, a better microphone. Like, I really need a better camera. I was looking up cameras. I was going to do a whole fucking thing. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to shoot. I'm going to work with what I have and just, like, make a shoot. And if I don't like it, I won't post it. Let me just get it wrong. And you know what? I ended up using it. Episode 1, I ended up using it. And then I realized, like, once I made that, I was like, oh, shoot, I can just, like, make a bunch of these now. And then I'll just, like, make incremental improvements. Like, I'm going to take some coloring lessons so I can color these episodes better. But really, like, color them in less time because I'd be spending way too much time on it and it doesn't look that great. I would love to spend, like, 1 hour just coloring it really quick, or even 15 minutes, dude, and just do a way better job than what I'm doing. A. B, I do want to, like, get a better camera at some point. All those things. I'm thinking about all those things. But I wouldn't be at this place if I didn't allow myself to be anti-perfectionist and just get it wrong. Like, every time I'm learning a board game, I always do. My mom and I are opposites with board games. When we're sitting learning the board game, my mom is going to explain. She's going to read 20 minutes of rules while people are just sitting there like, oh my God, explain the whole thing. And then when we start the game, I'm like, how do you expect me to remember the first thing you said 20 minutes ago? That's not how you learn a game. The way you learn a game is you have a practice round and you have someone that has read the rules already lead and just show people how to do it. And then when you get things wrong, that's the best teacher. That's how you end up learning the board game anyways, because people are going to explain the rules to you for 20 minutes. You're still going to get it wrong. And then when you get it wrong, then that's when the actual learning happens. You go, oh, that's why that rule exists. That's why rule number 8 exists, because rule number 7 might lead to this type of scenario that can occur, and to decide how we, which player gets the win in the situation, we refer to rule number 8. Now I know why that's there. When you're just reading it and I'm like, what's going on? No, I need to, like, see the problems play out. We learn from problems. That's design thinking. That's top-down thinking. You gotta think that way, I think. So anyways, that's why I love being anti-perfectionist, because I get to those problems sooner. And so I always tell my mom when we're playing board games, just start the game. If as long as one of us knows the rules, do you know the rules? Okay, you're the leader. Start the game. Tell me what to do, one thing at a time. And then when I make a mistake, you explain the rule. Because rules in games don't necessarily happen in sequential order anyways. Like, you could hit rule number 9 on the first turn and they're, Anyway, all that to say, I kind of went off about how I think board games should be played. I kind of subtweeted my mom there for a little bit. But I do think that I like my approach to learning board games better than how my mom does it. But anyway, it's not about that. The point is anti-perfectionism and looking for problems to solve and learning from facing a problem is the key to everything. So that's why I value anti-perfectionism. Now, how do we actually do that in music? I would say I mean, yeah, allow yourself to make bad music. Like, dude, I made a beat 3 days ago, and I was totally bummed. I made like only one beat that day, and it wasn't good. And this is something I have done hundreds of times, you guys. I mean, just think about what it takes to even say that. I have had a day where I only made one beat, and that one beat sucked. I've had that experience hundreds of times, which means I've had days where the beat went great a bunch of times. I've had days where I made 3 beats and they were great a bunch of times. I had days where I had 3 beats and they all sucked a bunch of times. Like, if you really have to do this stuff so much that all of the possible scenarios have already played out in a way. But anyway, another reason to be anti-perfectionist, dude. Just like think about all the practice you get from quantity of attempts. Dude, you know what I say about quality versus quantity. I think this quality versus quantity argument is totally out of whack. It doesn't even make any sense, you guys. I be hearing beginners saying quality over quantity. And if you're a beginner, quality isn't even an option. Quality has not even given you an invite. What are you talking about? Like, you try your best, of course. That goes without saying. Like, this shouldn't even... Everything about this discussion is like out of whack for me. First off, it should be a given you try your best all the time. You should always try your best. Don't expect your best, but you try your best all the time. Obviously. So now, if we're looking at the result of quantity versus quality, which do you want? Quality is subjective. Again, it's just like this whole conversation is like out of whack. Quantity is something you can control. And quantity is practice. The definition of practice is a large quantity of attempts consistently over a long period of time. I'm fired up this morning, dude. Quantity is so important. And I think perfectionism is valuing quality at the expense of quantity. And we know where that goes. It rarely goes well. Now, the people that can be perfectionist but not sacrifice the quantity, someone like, they say Dr. Dre's a perfectionist. Well, Dr. Dre also made like 10,000 beats in his life. So he was never a perfectionist at the expense of amassing a large quantity of practice, a large quantity of attempts, a large quantity of artistic works. Dude, Leonardo da Vinci had 10,000 sketchings, is that a word? Sketches. Etchings, sketches, mix them together. 10,000 sketches that we know of, which if you did one every day, it would take you 27 years to make that. And that's not counting the paintings. Did this man make sculptures? I think he did. Like the dude was doing... the amount of paintings he did. How many paintings did Leonardo da Vinci make? And so some people say, like, when people do you can't rush art, the Mona Lisa took 4 years. I'm like, you think that was the only thing Da Vinci did in those 4 years? He was sketching stuff. He was painting other stuff. He made, in that span of time, he probably made 2,000 other pieces. If you're just talking about the sketches alone, what's 4 times 365? It's 12, 4, 24, 1460. That's 1,460 sketches if you do one every day for 4 years. Like, what are we talking about? 1460 about. Yeah, that's why I'm anti-perfectionist. Now that said, there's a limit. You also have to know when to turn on the afterburners and finish a project. Butt in chair and finish a project. That is, that takes a little bit of perfectionism. That takes a little bit of pushing that upward ceiling in a way that takes force. Dude, I love when people say you can't force art. That always kind of annoys me a little bit because I think making art, first off, there's no limit to the amount of ways it can be made, including being forceful sometimes. Sometimes it does. Yeah, it takes force, dude. The word force is a beautiful word. Now, not force like, I mean force like the way a wave, a tsunami can be a force. The way nature can be a force. You got to be a force sometimes. And music should take everything. It should take it. It should. I mean that figuratively, but like, it should take your intellect. It should take your heart, your soul. It should take your taste, your quirks, your like the weird aesthetics you're into. It should take your past, your story, and it should take your force. Sometimes you gotta fucking sit in that chair for an extra 2 hours and click another 2,000 to 3,000 times and make those 2,000 to 3,000 clicks to make those edits, to make hundreds and hundreds more edits than you thought you could do because 2 hours ago you wanted to quit. But you know what? You got to keep going. That is force. And that, you cannot tell me that's not one of the most beautiful aspects of making art. Having completed 8 albums, I can tell you right now, I love that part. Yeah. Anyway, all these ideas of perfectionism and quantity versus quality, and you can't rush art, you can't force art, all these things, they're really all in the same world. Because I think if anything, being a perfectionist, and again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because there's aspects of me where I do turn it on. And I feel like the perfectionism part, that's kind of the force part. That's the part where you like, I'll impose my will on an album when I get to that last 20% and I'm trying to close in on it like you're hunting something. Like I'll close in on it and really impose my will on it and impose my perfectionism. Be like, you know what? 100 more edits today. Let's go. The last thing I'll say about this, I'm sorry, I'm going crazy today, dude. How long have I been talking? Damn, we're already an hour. I've only done like 3 questions. 2 questions? I don't even fucking know. Yeah, right. My 10 bounces exercise is a very good exercise. When I'm getting close to finishing an album, I'll do a 10 bounces exercise where basically I'll bounce 10 versions of the song. 10, that's a lot. And every time I bounce it, I'll choose a certain number of edits, a certain number of things that have to change every time. So maybe I'll do 5 edits. So I'll bounce a song, I'll listen to it, usually in my car, and I'll say, the shaker needs to be quiet. I need the bridge to transition better. I need a better outro, and I need the bass to be louder in this one part, whatever. I don't know. And then I'll go back to my studio, I'll make the 5 edits, and I'll bounce it, and I'll repeat it again. That's putting your will onto something. And usually it helps me when I'm running out of steam when I'm making an album. Okay. Let me get another question in here because I'm going nuts today, dude. I'm going nuts. I'm going crazy. Let's go.
Yo, Kiefer, this is Briley.
Briley.
I'm a songwriter out of Texas. I also play guitar. My question has to do with like simplicity and ego. And I'm curious how you personally deal with like writing something simple and being okay with it. Being a technically proficient piano player, I'm kind of in the same scenario with guitar, but I'm writing songs and trying to embrace the simplicity that's sometimes kind of necessary to get a message or a point across. So yeah, then I know for a while you were trying to embrace like triads in your last record when you've got such a vast
Check.
chord knowledge. So yeah, basically I'm just kind of wondering how you deal with being more simple and being okay with that, and also balancing the more technical side of things. And yeah, thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Bradley. That's a fantastic question. I love this question because it speaks to a narrative that we have out there. And I think it's just that. It's just a narrative. It's not the truth, in my opinion. The narrative is that being simple is a sacrifice of some kind, or that it's a, like you talk about being okay with it. I'm more than okay with being simple. I mean, in fact, I don't see it as any trade-off, to be honest with you. It's got nothing to do with being simple or complex. Like when I really think about it, I mean, obviously on the surface, you could say like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I do very simply, and obviously, I love being simple. Like you could say that on the surface, but what's actually going on, my actual value system is not simplicity over complexity. I love complex music. My value system is clarity over non-clarity. I do not like musicians that don't play clearly, and you probably don't either. That's it. So the way that clarity plays in, or rather the way simplicity plays in, is that, if I'm playing music that's complex and I'm doing it not clearly, then I don't want to do it. That's it. I mean, I also do a lot of things that are relatively complex, it's funny. I do like to, again, it's almost like you're disguising the complex things, because again, it's all about making them very clear. And when things sound clear, they don't sound that complex. But there's a lot of things under the surface that I'm doing that a lot of people probably don't notice, and I don't want them to notice. I don't want people to be noticing, metadata about my art while it's happening. I just want them to be blindly experiencing it and just like letting it wash over them. Metadata to me means data about data. So for example, metadata would be like if you have like a song on iTunes, the metadata would be the length of the song, the name of the artist, the name of the genre, the name of the, all those columns in iTunes. It's not the song itself. In the same way that in my music, you could say metadata is this chord is D minor, it's in 4/4 time, it's 98 BPM or whatever. I don't want people thinking about those things. And so, yeah, being really, really clear and making things sound, really, really clear is a way to almost distract people from the fact that there actually may be complex things going on. So again, it's not about complexity versus simplicity as much as clarity. Kenny Barron gave a masterclass when I was at UCLA, and he said that was his number one thing. He's like, it's clarity. That's it. If you can play really clearly, can you phrase clearly? When you're playing the melody, do you write an arrangement that gets in the way, or do you write an arrangement that complements the melody, puts it up on a pedestal so it's super, super clear? Do you put a spotlight on the melody, Put a spotlight and zoom in on it real tight and just like make it really clear. That's what I'm into. And I do the same thing with my production. Again, it might sound simple, but there's a ton of detail that goes into how I make a melody super clear. Like there's moments that I don't think anybody would notice that I've worked in, and it's by design. I'm not bragging. I mean, it's just by design. I don't want people to notice. For example, if I take out one hi-hat in the 7th bar of the melody because I just need this one note to shine a little more without being louder than the previous piano note. And so the way I solved that was taking out a hi-hat or something, So again, it's not simplicity as much as just clarity. It's just that simplicity is a way to achieve that at times. And I have to admit, I do have a bit of an emotional response to the question, probably because I'm just immature, petty, and insecure as well. And I think the reason why I get a little petty about saying how are you okay with being simple almost implies that I'm making music in a lesser way, or that people that choose to make music simply or make it in a lesser way. But I would just say it's not simple versus complex, because simple music not executed well, simple music not executed clearly sounds bad. Complex music not executed well, complex music not executed clearly sounds really bad. They both sound really bad. Unless of course you're doing artistically trying to be unclear, but you need to, either way, you can be clearly unclear. You can be executing what you executing nebulousness well, in the same way that I could make a movie with an open-ended ending and execute that well. It's like, it's not supposed to be clear, but I'm the execution of the not clearness is good, so I think, yeah, dude, music that is not executed well doesn't sound good. As it's got nothing to do with simple versus complex, because I love complex music, So that's what I would say. And it's not even an ego thing. So now, addressing the ego part, we're working it all the way backwards in your question. My ego does come into play here. Oh, this is a good answer, because I am by no means trying to make it sound like I'm egoless. I do have an ego for sure. That's why I'm talking on a microphone for an album. For an hour. God, I'm caffeinated. I'm just making up words now. But my ego is not connected to how complex is my music. My ego is connected to, again, how clear is my music? How well am I communicating an idea? That's what I value myself on. And I think that's what other people value myself on. No one's looking at my music and being like, wow, that guy's making really complex stuff. I think they're looking at my music and they see it as unique. They see it as, it's my favorite stuff, and I've put all my favorite things together. It's very me. And even though I'm not blowing people away with complexity, I think that people think I phrase things clearly. So that's where my ego is. If I'm going to be honest with you, let's do another voicemail. But Briley, thank you for that question. I loved tackling that one. It's so interesting for so many reasons. I think it gets right at the heart of this narrative that I hear all the time, that playing simply is somehow a concession of some kind. And as I showed, I will combat that any day. Anyway, let's hear this one. Let's do one more. Here we go.
Hey, Kiefer, this is Trevor from the Bay Area. I'm just wondering about bass lines. I'm trying to get better at them. I feel like I'm kind of stuck using just the root and the fifth of the chords. So I don't know when to use the other notes in the chord. I don't know if I should use them as passing notes and then just save the root for the strong beats. So yeah, if you have any input or wisdom or knowledge on how to get better at bass lines, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Love all the content you do and all the music you put out. Peace.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Trevor. Really appreciate that. I'm going to bust out my keyboard for this one. Bass lines. Okay, the first thing I would say is you got to check out your favorite bass players in whatever style you're in. You got to know some tunes. For example, yesterday I was listening to Chris McBride, excuse me, this Walter Smith Trio album called Twio, spelled with a W, Twio. And I was just listening to Christian McBride walk a bass line. Now that's straight ahead. That's jazz. So that's going to be different than, if you're trying to write songs like, like Stevie Wonder, and you should probably know, Too High, for example. Ding dong boom 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 boom. That's funny because that kind of is between just 5 and 1, isn't it? Now, so again, my answer is going to be based on, what style of music are we talking about here? But if you're talking about, I'll speak about my music for now, since I'm here. And, let's see. What's a tune I should do? Let me make one up. So, let me pull up the keyboard here. So, let's come up with a chord change. Let's say my chord change is... God, I need to learn how to get comfortable on this couch, dude. I'm struggling over here. I'm not even going to lie to you. I have not set this up well. Okay, so let's say we had a chord change that went like this. Let's go from like E flat minor to A flat minor to A sus. That way I get a chord in there that's kind of weird, so outside the key. So let's say it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and then 2 bars of A. 1, 2, 3, Oops. It's hard to play this keyboard, sorry. So, right now, admittedly, I'm playing kind of busy. What I'm doing is I'm hitting like landmarks. Like, I know I'm gonna do this on 1, 2, hit this on 1. Or I guess I was hitting on the and before, but let's say I'm doing it on the 1 now. Oh my God! So let's say I was doing this on beat 1, and then I'm hitting this on beat 1, and then I'm hitting this on beat 1. So in between, I can play the whole scale. Check it out. 3, 4, a 1. I'm playing every note in the scale for each of those. Even I'm adding in notes too, just so that I can, Now another thing is, the reason why I might add some notes in is, sometimes it's really nice to hit, whenever I do hit these landmark notes, I don't want to leap too much sometimes. Because check it out, there's 2 things that cause instability. One is playing a non-chord tone. So for example, if I was playing E flat and I just played a bunch of non-chord tones, so I was like, right? if I'm just playing notes that aren't in E flat minor, okay? Another thing that's unstable is leaping, right? I'm leaping, I'm going from here. But even if I leap within E flat, check it out. What if I went like, you know, unstable, kind of cool, but right, okay, I'm fucking up over here. But yeah, if I'm leaping, you know, maybe not the strongest bass line either. Parts of that was kind of cool though, I'm not gonna lie. So then I would say, basically, if you are gonna do play non-chord tones, just make sure if you are gonna play any of these notes, you know, make sure they're you know, they're coming right back to a chord tone, right? You don't want to play if you're playing like consecutive non-chord tones, that can be pretty unstable. Like check it out, like right. But if I go see it? That's fine. I don't know why I'm like swinging right now, but again, a non-chord tone, but it's only a half step away from where I'm going. Whereas if I played a non-chord tone and jumped, probably not. So keeping in mind, you know, leaps and non-chord tones, you know, as a way to be unstable, as long as you're, you know, balancing those things. Like I would just say if melodically, if your bass line is like something's off about it, I would just look at that, just be like, make sure I'm playing, you know, scale tones and, you know, and then also I would just like, yeah, like, you know, like the job of a bass also has a functional job, which is to play the bottom notes of the chord. So now that doesn't mean I might play other notes. Like, you know, when I play this A flat minor, I might put D flat on the bottom. I could put E flat on the bottom, maybe briefly. But yeah, the last thing I'll say is like, you know, I love coming up with bass lines like this. Like I'll be like I'll say something. I'll say a sentence and then I'll convert it to music. I'll say a sentence and I'll convert it to music. Do da do da da. Do do da da do da da. I'll say a sentence and convert it to music. Do da do da da. Down up up. Do do da da do da da. Do do da da do da da. Do da do da. Do do da do da. And I'll kind of move it around just to make it. Yeah, that's cool. You know, and think about it, you know, when I was first coming up with that, I wasn't thinking harmonically at all, you know. In fact, I changed the harmony on top of it a few times until I got it where I wanted it to be. So, you know, bass lines don't even have to be harmonically driven initially. You know, you can always like retrofit harmony onto it. So just a few things about bass lines that might be different from how you normally think about them. That said, the best thing to do is to study bass lines, study existing bass lines. Like, here's something I would ask you. Do you know who your favorite bass players are? Do you know what, in the context of the music that you love, in the genre of music that you love? Like, can you sing their bass lines? Can you play their bass lines? If I were you, I would learn 5 songs where you love the bass line in a way that you would like to write bass lines like that. Learn those songs, learn how to play them. So yeah, first I would ask you, have you done that? And if you have done that, do it again. And if you haven't done it, do it. All right, you guys, that's all I have for today. I went hard. I hope you guys enjoyed it, whatever. Yeah, send me a message, send me a comment, send me a voicemail. Again, I'm at 323-325-1650. Much love, everybody. Be encouraged. Be yourself in as big a way as possible. I'm having trouble talking today. Be yourself in as big a way as possible. I almost bumped it the second time. Barely survived. Much love, everybody. I really appreciate all of you. Please come back. I'm going to have another guest soon. I'm figuring out who that is. Until then, peace.